So in John chapter 6, verse 40, Jesus says, "For this is the will of my Father, that everyone who looks on the Son and believes in him should have eternal life, and I will raise him up on the last day." So the will of God is to look at Jesus. You see, Jesus is always looking at the Father, okay? Jesus doesn't do or say anything unless he sees the Father doing and saying what he's doing. Yeah, you know what I mean? So Jesus is always looking at the Father. And when we look at Jesus, Jesus is the exact image, like it says in the book of Hebrews, the exact image, the exact imprint of God's nature. He is the image of God. And so when we look at Jesus, he is the lens by which we see God. So if we want to see God rightly, we look at him through Jesus Christ. For example, you have a camera. I learned this from Eric Gilmore, but he said that when you have a camera and there's no lens, you put it up to your eye and all you could see is bright white light. You can't see anything. It's just bright white, blinding light. And that's kind of how it is when you try to look at God without Jesus. All you see is bright light and you don't see or know anything and you're blinded by it. And then you take the lens and you attach it to the camera, and then now you could see everything clearly when you look, because the lens help you see, and Jesus is the lens by which we get to see God. That's why Jesus says you cannot see or know God apart from me. You have to, if you look at Jesus and you see Jesus and you know Jesus, then you know the Father when you look at Jesus. And so that is why it is the will of God the Father for everyone, everyone. That means no matter what nationality, no matter what gender, what race, God desires for everyone to look at his Son. Because there's a lot of people in the world who try to honor God apart from Jesus. And they don't see God rightly. They look at people who are sick and they're like, oh, they're sick because their parents sinned or something. Oh, they're born blind because obviously their parents did something bad. Or that person is sick because they deserved it. Maybe they sinned or something. But that is not how Jesus revealed God. When Jesus saw a sick person, he went and healed them because it was God's will for the sick to be healed. When somebody see a dead person, they're like, oh, that is so sad. They're lost forever. They're dead. It's just God's will. It's God's timing. It's time for them to go. But Jesus, when he saw a dead person, he went and raised them from the dead because it's God's will for people to live. And death is not part of his ultimate plan. Death is from the devil. And Jesus was willing to die. The author of life was willing to die to conquer death. And so, my friends, that is why if you want to know God, you cannot know him apart from Jesus, who is the exact imprint of God's nature. A lot of people, they look at the world and they think, oh, God is not good or something, because they see God through like the things of the world, like through wars and famines and pestilence. But when you look at Jesus, that Jesus was willing to die on the cross to wash the sins of the world away, to wash people free of their sins, then you can understand the nature of God. That he did not create this world to look the way that it is. He did not create this world so that there would be wars and famines and little children dying of sickness. No, he created the world good and beautiful. He created the world wonderful and perfect. But because of sin, that one thing, sin came in, and then sin brought in death. It brought in sickness. It brought in the temptations of the devil, because the devil rules over death and sickness and sin. The devil loves those things. And so when sin came into the world, it brought this whole mess of stuff, of darkness. And God was willing to lay down his son Jesus to take those things away. And so that is why when a believer comes to Christ and their eyes are opened to see the glory of God, They're like, wow, everything looks different. I used to see things in black and white, but now I see things in color. Wow, God is amazing. See, we cannot know God apart from Jesus. That is why Jesus is the one true name, the only name under heaven with which mankind can be saved. There is no other way. There's no other way to heaven except through Jesus. There really is no other way, no other cult, no other program, no other religion could save. Only Jesus is the way to heaven. And it says right here, this is the will of my Father, that everyone who looks on the Son and believes in him should have eternal life. And Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me. Jesus made it very clear. If you look at a bunch of other religions, there are 4,200 religions out there. They're going to come up with a bunch of things. They're going to have a bunch of opinions, and they're going to say a bunch of things, but there is no like sure fact. They'll be like, oh, this is good. All religions are good, blah, blah, blah. This is good. This is okay, blah, 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 blah. You can do this or you can't do this. They throw a million decisions at you. But when you come to Jesus, he only gives you two decisions. Believe in him and have eternal life, or reject him and have eternal death. And I don't know about you, but nobody wants eternal death. And so this is the will of God for everyone. This is the will of God, that everyone who looks on the Son and believes in him, in Jesus Christ, should have eternal life, and I will raise him up on the last day. Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life. There is no other way to heaven except through Jesus Christ.